Hi, I'm Dr. Avanti Kumar Singh. In over 20 years of practicing both Western medicine and Eastern healing traditions, the most important thing that I've learned is that healing is a journey we take together. So on this podcast, I'll be demystifying Ayurveda and other integrated medicine, showing how these simple, ancient practices are the keys to unlocking a healthy modern life. We are all healing catalysts because healing starts within. It starts with you, and it starts right now. This is a Soulfire production. Episode number 42. Well, hello, my beautiful friends. It's been a minute. It's so great to be back with you for a new season 3 of The Healing Catalyst. Now, I'll be honest, when I first started this podcast back in 2020, I had intended to do maybe 25 or 35 episodes to create a library of resources for all of you. And at the end of last year, I was well over 40 episodes and wasn't sure if I should really continue doing the podcast. But the number of messages that I've received from all of you in January and February asking me, when's the podcast coming back? Or telling me how much you enjoy it and sharing how much it's helped you. Well, you all made my decision for me. I had to continue it because this is why I do what I do, to help all of you on your healing journeys. And so here we are, starting season 3. And so my team, well, we used the break in January and February to refresh everything. We have a new look, a new sound, which I hope you love as much as we do. And we're moving to a weekly show. Me and my team are so excited about this season because we're bringing you conversations that you're not going to hear anywhere else. Conversations with my mentors, my colleagues, my friends, and so many people that I admire. People who are thought leaders and experts in every field of Eastern healing systems and integrated medicine. And we're also adding a few new formats to the podcast. I'll still be doing my solo episodes and guest interviews, but I'm also adding trio conversations where I'll be joined by 2 different guests to weigh in with their perspectives on a single topic. I'll also be doing an Ask Me Anything episode every single month. And so if you'd like to be on the show to ask your question, click the link in the show notes and you can leave me a voice message with your question. I'll be personally reviewing every question, and who knows, you might be on my first Ask Me Anything episode in April. So make sure you get your question into me. Okay, so let's dive into today's episode, which kicks off season 3 and kicks off the intention for this month, movement as medicine. And of course, the first 2 people that I thought of to talk about movement as medicine are my sweet friend, Tara Stiles, and her partner in life and work, Michael Taylor. Now, this was supposed to be a trio conversation with all 3 of us, but there was so much to talk about that we ended up splitting it into 2 episodes. So today is part 1, in which Michael and I talk about Tai Chi. And next week will be part 2 with Tara to talk about yoga. And I have to tell you, I was so excited to talk to Mike about Tai Chi because not only is he an expert in the field, but he's a gifted teacher who has this incredibly beautiful way of teaching us how to move, how to use movement as medicine. Now, a little bit about Mike. Mike is the co-founder of Strala Yoga and has practiced Eastern movement and healing techniques, including Tai Chi, Qigong, and Shiatsu for more than 3 decades. In his younger years, Mike challenged centuries of martial traditions in hundreds of competitions by applying unruly imagination to a world where rules were unbreakable. He continued on to medical applications of the mind-body connection, studying mind-body medicine at Harvard and alternative medicine and psychology at Oxford. Mike then worked in healthcare, joined a web company, founded a pharmaceutical and biotech software company, and then found his way back to healthcare done right, helping people let go of stress in their bodies and minds to become their own best caregivers. Mike also climbs a few mountains here and there in his spare time. I mean, he has so much spare time, right? No, not really. And he's married to Strala co-founders Tara Stiles. In my conversation with Mike, he tells us about growing up with Tai Chi as a way of being in his body and moving through the world, We talk about the concepts of softness and ease and how we need to learn them in a different way. Mike also explains the differences among the various martial arts and dives deep into the 4-step process of using Tai Chi in our everyday and how to access the medicine of Tai Chi. It's a fascinating conversation that will leave you with so many profound learnings about how you move in your body and through the world. I hope you enjoy part 1 of this 2-part episode, my conversation with Michael Taylor about Tai Chi and movement as medicine. Well, hello, Mike. How are you?
Everything's good. It's great to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for doing this for me. I feel like I coordinated this through Tara, but thank you for saying yes. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited to have you.
No problem. Everything goes through Tara. She's the boss.
So, I am so excited to talk about Tai Chi, which is your expertise and something you've been doing for so many years. I'm so fascinated by Tai Chi. I don't know enough about it. And I think that it is such a profound healing modality. And so we'll get all into it. But, I really wanted to focus in this month in the 3rd season of the podcast to talk about movement as medicine. And I know that Tai Chi is so much more than movement, which I know we'll get into. But before we jump into Tai Chi, I'm really curious. How did you get into Tai Chi? I've read a little bit about you. I did some research. Of course, I do that on everybody. And I've heard or read that your father and your grandfather did Tai Chi, and that's how you got into it. But can you tell us more about that journey?
Oh, sure. Well, I had weird parents, right?
Didn't we all?
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I was homeschooled in my early years. And I think, often when I hear from people about, oh, be careful about homeschooling because you'll miss this, and that, like, you're right. I did miss that, but then also you gain this, that, and the other thing. So I think one of the things I gained was maybe having a broader curriculum and more opportunity starting when I was very young to just go in whatever direction. And yeah, you're right. Back then, the direction that was most appealing was I just thought my grandfather was awesome. He was this Navy captain who had a long career with the Navy, and I just wanted to know everything that he knew. And my dad also was helping along the way with that, and I think that's how it all began and grew for the first many years.
And so why Tai Chi? I mean, was it something that they had practiced? Like, where did that come from?
Sure. Well, I would say when I was a kid, if I was learning Tai Chi, I didn't know it. So the ways in which I learned Tai Chi were, okay, there are some really good foundations for how to use your whole body to your advantage. When I was a kid, I wasn't huge, still not the biggest person in any sport that I've played, but learning to use every part of me helping every other part became a big focus. And kind of without knowing it, that would be another way, maybe a Western way of describing harmony, a word you'll hear a lot in Tai Chi and Qigong. So without knowing it, I was learning the foundations for how to navigate through pretty much everything in a Tai Chi way. And that was I think I wouldn't say it was a sneaky way of learning Tai Chi, but I think when I was a kid, and most kids I've seen, they're probably more interested in learning Kung Fu or, the things that they see on TV, in the movies, and the things that there are usually classes for kids that are a bit more active, a bit more athletic seeming, at least from the outset. And so I think if I had been shown a group of people all moving very slowly in a field. That image we all have of, oh, Tai Chi, I need this. I had seen that when I was 8. I was like, that's the most boring thing I've ever seen. I want to kick and punch and run. And so I think the way that I first was getting into these foundations was, okay, whatever you want to do, here's a way to make it better.
And so, was that something that your grandfather practiced or your father practiced? Like, I'm so curious how it's such a unique way of thinking about things. And at such a young age, or to be taught that way, that's coming from somewhere. So, tell me about that.
Sure, and yes. just
Yeah.
I just got lucky. Had the right relatives and the right friends along the way.
And so they had already been practicing Tai Chi. And so they just basically passed it down to you.
Pretty much. And I'd say I've learned with different people in different decades, as you said before, that this has been a long road.
hmm
And with some of those people, Tai Chi or Qigong or Gong Fu were more, hey, these are the foundations, which actually oftentimes we say Tai Chi. Tai Chi is 800 years old, give or take. Qigong is more than 5,000 years in the making. And so often when we talk about the foundations for how to move and how to navigate around relationships with yourself and relationships and connections with other people, that didn't originate in Tai Chi, it originated in Qigong. And then Tai Chi bringing in martial and healing applications are very much on both ends building off of what was developed for a much longer period with Qigong. So I would say a lot of the people that I was learning from along the way weren't necessarily saying, and now we're going to practice Tai Chi, but they had found ways to have Qigong and Tai Chi in their own lives with what they were doing, with a focus first on these foundations, these constants for practice, and then carrying it into, oh, well, here's what makes it relevant for you. That's really what I was interested in. I wanted to climb better. I wanted to play soccer better. Later on, I wanted to row better, and I got into mountaineering. So whatever I was doing, what was nice about from a very early age, I wasn't learning, say, if kids are often learning Japanese karate, or they're learning kung fu, Chinese art. They might often focus in classrooms on learning drills and forms and sequences of forms that are set. And learning that, it often happens that it's hard to say, well, how does that then apply to the rest of my life? Or am I only doing that when I'm in my kung fu room or in my karate room? And at the same time, in Tai Chi and Qigong, there's this constant philosophy, which is no separation. Learn nothing that is separate from everything else. And so I was just lucky to learn that way first. So when I found my way into this room or that special room, I didn't have it ever stay in that room. It always went everywhere.
That's just, I mean, it's so amazing because how incredibly lucky are you that you, first of all, had that, that training or that sort of exposure from a very young age of learning these foundations in a way that are actually applicable to life. Because I find that so much of what we do in the Western world and Western culture is very siloed. You know, you do this for this, you do this for this, you do this for this, but it's never integrated into your entire life and how you live your life and how you exist in your physical form or within yourself in your system. It's amazing that you had that experience. And so maybe let's back up and talk about the differences between Tai Chi and Qigong, but even, you know, some of the what you mean by foundations. Like educate us on what all these different terms mean and what the differences are.
Sure. Good question. You're good at asking the good questions. So, learning Tai Chi and Qigong, I'll just keep saying Tai Chi, although often Qigong is really the bigger term that refers to all of it, but I think more people know about Tai Chi.
Mhm.
So it maybe that's the great main term to use for now. But there's a process for this, which begins with noticing. Hey, what's going on in me? What's going on around me? But really, first, what's going on in me? Got to see that first. I've got to feel that. I've got to notice the communication signals, messages my body's sending. And there's a how-to for that in Tai Chi and Qigong. And then the next part of this process is, well, how do I move with that? How do I navigate through what I'm doing? I'm taking what I'm noticing now, and I want to move with it in a good way. And so there are foundations. There's a how-to of moving, as you already said, and moving is not just in a set of Tai Chi or Qigong forms. That has many contexts. So it's in every context, whether it's everyday human life, getting around a kitchen or driving or standing in line at the grocery store, or sort of special things that we all like to do. Like, you know, one person might love CrossFit or high intensity interval training. Another person like me might love high altitude mountaineering, whatever the sort of human things that we love doing, the special practices. There's a how to for that context too. And then there's specific Qigong and Tai Chi practices that you practice on your own and also in connection with other people. And then there's martial and healing applications. So there's many contexts for this movement. And then the third part of this process is you're hearing the messages, the signals. You're connected to the signals that your body is sending you and your environment is giving you. You're moving in a way that's harmonious, that's helpful for you there. And that signal plus movement leads to a transformation. Somehow you're making here better, and you're also making it better to be here. And I know that sounds like a bit of double talk, but they're two, it's kind of cool. They're two really little bit different things. I could tell, just through your body language, I can see you like, yes, I get it.
Yes.
So I hope that makes some
Yes.
sense.
Yes.
And then the last part of that process is repeat, because we're never done with that.
Right.
And it's never a binary. Oh, well, I'm hearing all the messages and I'm moving wonderfully and transforming wonderfully, or I'm not. We're always somewhere in a circle there.
Okay. So many profound things that you said just now. Let's go back to this. Okay. So let's take this theory that you've just presented, which is beautiful and profound, and let's make it more applicable. So tell me what that means. So give us an example so that it becomes more practical for me and for my listeners who don't know enough about Tai Chi to really understand what you're talking about.
This is awesome. You sound like Tara. Like, so what, Mike? I love it. So yes, each one of those categories in the process, the notice, the move, the transform, repeat, has a set of how-tos that you'll find in Qigong. And they're big. It's a big set, but always there's really simple beginnings. So the noticing, we all have our own ways of hearing the messages our body sends to us. I'll tell you a little story. Back when I was doing, long before I met Tara, I was in deep in a few different yoga systems. And so we'd sit there, we'd sit down cross-legged, fire up our best mudra and, get the posture and everything and rock steady. And, your ankle would start to hurt or my knee would be hip. But eventually those sensations would go away. Right? I wouldn't feel it anymore. And so, talking about these experiences, it's like, oh, you've transcended, Mike. That's what the guru in charge would tell me. Oh, you've transcended because you are not this body. You are not those messages. You have now progressed to a higher state, your true state. And of course, for you with your medical background and anybody who's studied a little biology, that's not transcendence. That's just when you ignore pain in your body, that loop stops firing eventually. It's your body in normal language. oh, you're not interested in that message. Okay, I'll stop sending it for now.
Mm-hmm.
Until the imminence of a greater level of harm presents itself, and then I'll come back and try again.
Exactly.
This is your body talking to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the beginning of noticing in Tai Chi and Qigong. It's okay. There are all these signals, all these ways of communicating that your body has with you, some of which we may have ignored for a long time, some of which we may not be in tune with as much as we like. And that begins with just slowing down enough that I have a chance to breathe a little deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like the most silly, simple thing in the world. But remembering to do that, remembering to breathe a little longer and a little deeper on your inhale. Use that to feel around a little more, because a deeper inhale, it's unusual. So you will feel a little more with that breath. And then on your even longer, even more unhurried exhale than usual, let a little something go. Release a little, relax a little, improve something a little. Improve your position, your posture, the way you're sitting now. Your ankle hurts? Change it. There's a constant in Tai Chi, which is never suffer a bad position. We're not here to practice suffering. We don't need to be better at suffering. We're too good at that already. We're too good at ignoring the messages that come through our body saying, don't do that. We're like, well, I can do that. I'm strong enough to do that. I can push through just to get that done, and then I'll listen. Well, I can tell you from my transcendence experience before, that path doesn't work so well. So the very beginning in this process of Tai Chi, to make it concrete, is creating a relationship between your breath and your body that moves you. And I'll tell you, there's a step before that. It's called softness. So this noticing is softness and relationship between your breath and body that moves you, helps you feel, notice. Softness is a big concept.
Mm-hmm.
And every time we talk about this concept, so often people say, well, but I don't want to be soft. That sounds bad. Sounds weak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there is this concept. Softness it's being a pushover, somehow not standing up for what you want or going for what you want or what you believe in. And so it's a word that needs to be learned in a different way. And sometimes people, when traveling around with Tara, people will say, well, in German, there isn't a good word for that. Or in Spanish, there's not or whatever language, because with us, it means a not so good thing. And really, in all the languages, there's always this challenge of, well, how do we understand? And maybe it's not with one word. So softness in a Tai Chi or Qigong context means bendable without always bending, movable without always moving. It means that I'm not so rigid that I get in the way of myself. And you can interpret that and use it literally. I'm not holding tension and locked up muscles and flex muscles and locked up joints that prevent me from moving even before I try to move. And then it's also figurative. I'm not locked in my mind so that I'm immovable. You want to be movable so you can be
Mm-hmm.
moved.
My mind is exploding, by the way. Just want you to know, like my brain is exploding. So keep going. Anyway, I'm listening. Whew, wow.
It's a
Okay.
big practice, right? It's a big practice. And what I'd say is, so there's softness, there's practices for softness in
Mm-hmm.
Qigong and Tai Chi. There's practices for creating this relationship between your breath and your body in Qigong and Tai Chi. Even when the concepts are mind blowing, and even when I sometimes I'll take these concepts and I'll be like, what was I doing for like 10 years or longer? I'm
Mm-hmm.
embarrassed to say to you the real number that came to my mind. It was longer than 10 years, but it's so even when it's mind blowing and even mind blowing positively, it's like, wow, well, what about the next 10 years?
Right.
what's beautiful about the mind blowing in these concepts is the practices are simple.
Yes, they are.
So if you've ever taken a sharp inhale when you're surprised, guess what that sharp inhale did? It lifted your whole body as a whole body. Or when things aren't dangerous and you just need to relax.
Hmm.
You've gone, ah. Guess what happened to your whole body when you did that like a human being instead of how I was taught to practice in some rooms? Your whole body would move together with your breath. There would be no part of you that was rigidly separate or holding some idealized form or position. As a human being, when we take breaths that way, inhales that way, exhales that way, when we jump up and down when we're cold, uh,
Right.
or we need to wake up, uh, all of those things are done with these foundations of Qigong, a relationship between your breath and your body that moves you, a body that's soft enough in the first place to be movable, a body that moves in harmony is one whole body, not a disconnected collection of parts that need to be individually fixed or manipulated. All of these things are in our biology, they're in our nature. We might have ignored that nature for a long time.
Right. And so what you're saying is very interesting because that is actually our human nature to move in that way, right? To have that startle response, right? Or to have that relaxation response. But it is drummed out of us as we get older, in this modern world that we live in, to not allow ourselves to respond in that way, to have that coordinated breath body movement that you're describing. That's what's coming to mind for me because I can see little children, your daughter, my children when they were younger, even as young adults, they still actually have more of a practice and ability to tap into their breath and their body more than I do as a 50-year-old, right? Um, so I see what you're saying exactly. And so it's almost like it's a practice of being human,
I
right?
love it. You're ready to go on tour.
Yeah. So that's a step. That's the first step, right? This idea of awareness, right? And so what's the second step for this concrete sort of application of Tai Chi?
So then there are foundations for movement.
Hmm.
And the first two are part of the noticing, the softness and relationship between your breath and your body that moves you. And then as small movements lead to bigger movements, you're moving your whole body from your center, not from your
Mm.
extremities. So you don't move an isolated hand or foot, arm, or leg. Large movements begin from your center and then ripple out through the rest of you. If you take a rope and you kind of just hang it, suspend it from one end, and then you jiggle the rope, you'll see a sine wave develop down that rope. You'll see ripples go down that rope. And then if you take your hand and you clench it around the middle of the rope, you've created a block in the rope. So there's a bit of rope above your hand and a bit of rope below your hand. Let's say I'm doing that with my left hand. And with my right hand, I'm holding the top of the rope. And I start to make that jiggle of the top of the rope, but my other hand is in the middle of the rope. That wave will only go down to my hand that's blocked the rope.
Right.
And then below that hand, no wiggle.
Hmm.
There's
Right.
no wave propagation. This is high school physics. So, what you want in Qigong and Tai Chi, and maybe as a human being, when you start your effort from one place, you don't want to have a bunch of blocks of wave propagation in your body. You want the effort that you put into one place to easily propagate through all the places. And so that's when Tai Chi and Qigong talk about moving from your center and moving your whole body as one whole body. That's what's meant by that. You start in your center, you let the energy of the movement of your center propagate out through the rest of you. It's a very sustainable and non injurious way to move. Then there are a number of other foundations. There are everyday human foundations like using momentum or opposites, going a little left to go right, back to go forward, up to go down. There's compress and release or open door, closed door. So you give some effort and then you relax. You give some effort and then you relax. So in Tai Chi, every single breath is in that circle. So Tai Chi never has this concept of, oh, relaxing's for later, relaxing's for vacation. Push through, get it done. We'll talk about that thing later. Every single breath, every single circle in Tai Chi is you're giving some energy to yourself and what's around you, the connections you have around you. And then every exhale is releasing, relaxing, letting go. Even if you're in the middle of a challenge, even if you're in the middle of a conflict, there's always that.
Right.
So there are foundations for just human everyday things. And then there are foundations for how to move through more specialized contexts. In Tai Chi, there's this practice called unweighting, where as you move, you shift your weight, you're standing, you're shifting your weight from one leg to another. The leg that's holding the weight, it's active. The leg that's not holding your weight is completely releasing, relaxing, letting go. And if you do that movement by initiating the move from one leg to another from your center, you're pulling the weight out of one leg at a time. That's called unweighting. It means that half of you is resting, at least half of you, all the time, even when you're doing tough stuff. And I said that this is very important in a martial context or in a Tai Chi context, but as I think about it, often you might learn it first in that context when you're studying Tai Chi. But, Tara brought me into working with the US tennis team. And this concept of unweighting one leg at a time and moving from one leg to another from your center, rather than shoving with your right leg to get to your left and then shoving with your left leg to get to your right. What we found was, oh, wow, I can move into getting the ball ahead of me, into my left leg. If I'm sitting back on my right leg, I can move at least as fast when I'm moving from my center and relax one of my legs in a way that I never could if I was using a lunging, a pushing from leg to leg, which prevents that half of me relaxing. So the applications across anything you're doing, I can tell you, high altitude mountaineering, if you're not using unweighting, if you're not moving from leg to leg from your center, if you're push, 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 push,
Right.
you are not going to make it back down that mountain.
Right. So that's the second step, is the movement. So first was awareness, second was movement, third is.
So yeah, there are many foundations for movement, both everyday human and that have a specific Tai Chi and Qigong context for practice. And then this third part of the process is making better, transforming the relationship you have with yourself and the relationship you have with what's around you, whether it's the environment or the people you're connected with, into something better. And so Tai Chi says, never suffer a bad position. Always improve the relationship you have to what's around you to be making it into something better. First, by noticing it. Second, by using these foundations for movement. And then third, for making sure that you're using those foundations to create this transformation. A little story there. Tara and I, part of a conference with a few doctors. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk was one of them, who's done quite a lot of research and work with trauma.
Yeah.
And I know that you know who he is.
Yeah.
So he mentioned loving Qigong for its transformational ability. And he mentioned doing some yoga and noticing it was very awkward and very uncomfortable for him. But what he imagined was beneficial for trauma was sometimes when we have the biological impact of trauma stuck in our bodies, we lose a sense of time, he said. We lose the sense of this too shall pass. And we're stuck in an intolerable neurological and chemical state as if it never passed, as if the initiation of the trauma never passed. So he said with yoga, he said, I could imagine that being in this really awkward, uncomfortable place, and then having the teacher count to 5, and then having it be over, and then doing the next awkward and uncomfortable place and having it be over. He thought, well, you're getting a sense of this too shall pass. And I think resetting the clock is very valuable in that way. But Qigong, wow. Here's a practice that says never suffer a bad position. Here's a practice that says if something isn't comfortable, isn't working, is causing suffering, is intolerable, change it. And here's how. And that's big. That's
Hmm.
this transformation part. You're always using these practices to make where you are better in a big picture, not just for you, but there are no lines in Tai Chi. One of the constants with Tai Chi is every line you turn into a circle. Never meet force with opposing force. It's never just you. It's always everything that's going on around you. Everything is here for you when you see it and you work with it in this sustainable way. So I think that's a big part of what I love about Qigong and Tai Chi, and also why Tara and I together in transforming yoga brought these foundations for moving this process of noticing, moving, and transforming into a really wonderful set of forms, but that at least the way I was learning it for 15, 20 years said, suffer a bad position. The truth of existence is suffering. Let's get better at suffering.
Hmm.
And from a medical perspective, that's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
It's not what we want to do.
No, because we're just putting ourselves into more chronic stress response, which just,
Exactly.
it has every physiological, manifestation. It's sort of like a domino effect that happens from there. So, so what you're saying with this idea of transformation of never suffer a bad position is when you have that awareness, you have the movements, the foundations for movement from the middle and all these different concepts that you've talked about. But then to basically the transformation piece is adjusting. So even if that movement, if it causes suffering, you adjust it and then you start back again. Is that sort of what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're always seeing what you're doing, and there's a measure. There's is this working?
Hmm.
You're making me think about this in a new way, which is really cool. It's is this working? And it
Right.
makes me think of my dad. He was a MIT PhD in math,
Hmm.
and the way he picked the field of math that he would study is at the time it was the field of math that was considered completely impossible. So that's the one he wanted to do. And he always said, "Oh, that's fine." But what I love about math, there are elegant ways to do what you're doing in less elegant ways. But there's a right or wrong. There's a feedback that you get that says this is working or this isn't. And that's a beauty also with these martial and healing arts that we're talking about with Tai Chi and Qigong. You get immediate feedback of this is working or this isn't, especially as you carry what you're doing in connection with another person. And that can be very hard. I know it was hard for me going through my earlier yoga experiences of knowing, okay, well, is that how a triangle is supposed to look?
Right.
Why? I don't, there's no immediate feedback other than what the teacher is saying. Um, is that how a warrior two is that alignment? Getting into a warrior two and then fixing one part at a time until all these individual parts look like they're in the right place. Uh, it seemed a little bit what my dad would call an English paper. It's, well, I guess the teacher is going to tell me if that's good or not, but he never liked English very much,
Hmm.
and he loved math. And I think what's beautiful in Qigong and Tai Chi, you can practice all of this on your own. But when you carry this into connection with another person, you get immediate learning feedback about what actually works and what doesn't.
So talk to me about that. What you mean by that when of the feedback from another person.
So when you come into connection with another person, if I come in quite rigid, if I come in using the strength of my arm or the strength of a leg to make this connection, I'm not coming in with my whole body soft, my whole body movable so I can be moved, my whole body in harmony so it can move first me in harmony with myself, and then me forming a harmonious connection with another person. Well, first of all, you'll feel that. And it's very hard. If I come in quite rigid and tough, the person opposite me, when we connect with each other hand to hand or arm to arm, elbow to elbow, very hard not to mirror that. So if
Mhm.
I'm rigid and tense, then you've got another person who's rigid and tense. And then we have a isolated strength competition. If my leg is stronger or my arm is stronger, plus I know a trick, that's what that connection becomes. And in Tai Chi, Qigong, that's considered the least interesting of contests you could possibly have. Because the biggest challenges that are available to us are not the ones that uh, can be approached or won in a limited version of ourselves, in an isolate, disconnect, or depleting, non-sustainable version. Because no matter how strong your leg or your arm is, or whatever strongest part you're relying on, it's not as strong as all of you. And that's a depleting strategy. And then from there, you try to start moving with another person in connection. You're going to feel right away the difference between moving well and not. And then as you carry this into a martial context, as my teacher for many decades said, Mike, you're going to get your butt kicked doing that.
Mhm.
So the immediate feedback is it just doesn't work. And in Tai Chi, if there's any rule in open connection or competition, it's you're preventing the other person first from hurting themselves. That's the one rule, if there's one rule. So this isn't about butt kicking. It's about learning how to use these foundations consistently in any context. So you have them consistently in any context. But when you practice them in a martial context in Tai Chi, you get this immediate feedback from another body about what works and what doesn't. Am I disconnecting? Am I just trying to do something to you with my arm? Or is it all of me that's connecting with you? Am I getting tired in one leg? Ooh, if I'm getting tired in one part of me faster than the other part, I don't have harmony. I'm using isolation and disconnection rather than all of me, every part of me helping every other part of me equally in on the party. So as you learn these foundations and you learn how to notice and work with the messages your body sends you, you will feel and see, especially in your connections with other people, and then also in your own practice, what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. And so, what's so fascinating about what you're saying is that it moves beyond the the realm of physical connection with another human being. It's also emotional, spiritual, energetic connection with others. Because, for example, you and I are on Zoom right now doing this podcast, right? And we have our video on. And if I had come I've never met you before in person, if I came into this interview with a very rigid energy, right? With not a soft energy, with not a sort of one that was willing to connect with you, your response would be mirroring my energy. So it's for me, it's bringing up so much about just how human beings interact with each other and exist in the world.
You're right. You're absolutely right. If I said to you, I'm very interested in all that you have to say, and I really want to learn from you, but you saw that my muscles were flexed, my
Right.
legs were locked. I was very much bracing for impact.
Hmm. Right.
It would be very hard to be much different from that.
Right.
We could both try, but and that's part of teaching Tai Chi. It's also as a teacher, part of what I think you've highlighted maybe the hardest thing. Part of what you're learning is how can I not mirror the bad stuff? That's super tough. The fellow that I practiced with for about 40 years, he's over 90 now. He could do it. I'm not there yet,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
working on it.
Yeah.
working on it. But that's part of, it's not even when you come to practice Tai Chi with someone, you're not even looking to be different from another person. You're looking to get feedback from each other right
Right.
away about, how am I?
Right.
How are you? And often you see yourself reflected through another person a whole lot faster than I can see me
Yes.
on
Yes.
my own.
Because in this example, if I had showed up that way and then you responded back to me in that way, if I'm aware enough, I'm going to make an adjustment and say, oh, that's not going to work. You need to soften yourself because this is the experience that Mike is having. And that's not the experience you're intending, right? And so you adjust from the feedback, which is what you're talking about, that idea of awareness, movement, feedback, transformation, and then you start the loop again. It's a circle.
Back to softness.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So you talked about Tai Chi in a martial arts context. So, how is Tai Chi as a martial art different than the other martial arts?
Well, the textbook answer would be it holds yin and yang together. So it's not by contrast, a hard style martial art would be more of what you see in a Bruce Lee movie. It's very much flexing and bracing and rapid, often disconnected movements. It's meeting force with opposing force and overwhelming your opponent. They go down, you kick them, and then you kick them again.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think in the Karate Kid, it was that hard style martial art that was in a bit made fun of. But wonderful aspects of practice for discipline and accomplishment, and there are good things in all of these practices. I think the good and the bad is determined by how we are as humans in the middle of whatever we're doing. And then you have soft style martial arts or soft style arts, which uh, might be just more focused on literally softness. And then you have Tai Chi coming in the middle, where every line is turned into a circle. You're always using exactly the energy that's given you. So whether that's from the floor or the wall or the ground or the air or from the person or people that you're working with, you're giving exactly what's given. You're returning exactly what's given in a circle. So every line is never a meeting force with opposing force. But if there's a very strong force that's given to you, you're learning how to transform that from a line into a circle. There's a very soft, gentle force, that's given you. You're working with that. So my experience with Tai Chi is it's an all of it martial art, much more than what I experienced when I was, say, learning Taekwondo or karate or Kung Fu. I got great things and had wonderful experiences in virtually everything that I was connected with. But I would say for me, carrying this forward over the course of decades and then looking ahead at another set of decades, I hope coming up, uh, Tai Chi for me is the most all encompassing, the most sustainable for practice.
So, what would you say is Tai Chi's role in health and longevity? So, you've talked about the martial arts component, but there is this other piece that it is medicine for healing.
Right. So, forming a healing connection with yourself is the other branch that Tai Chi took. Uh, so, coming out of Qigong, there was the martial applications of Tai Chi developed, and the practice that you see all the people in the field going through. Those are a set of martial movements practiced slowly, so they become habitual, and in a sequence that sometimes might be what happens in real life, although real life tends to throw some curveballs. So, you know,
Just a few.
uh, so there's that, and then also the same foundation. It's making a good connection with yourself, so that I'm a whole body. I'm a whole body in harmony. I'm a whole body that moves as a whole body in harmony.
Hmm.
When I touch something, I'm not touching it with my hand. I'm bringing my whole self into connection, and maybe my hand gets there first, or maybe an elbow, or maybe another part or a knee, or something. And all of that is applied in a martial context with Tai Chi. And then those same foundations, those same concepts and constants are applied when I'm making physical connections with myself. So if I'm rolling through some of the qigong practices, for example, and I'm connecting with different meridians, I'm never connecting with a set of, it's as if my fingers are a set of tools that are coming from somewhere else and coming down to do something to that part that needs help. It's always much more, well, how can I get all of me to be one, all of me? And the connections I make are whole body, whole self connections. You learn that to do that. You learn to do that with yourself. And then it gets more complicated when another person is there. Because even more than wanting to help yourself, oh boy, you want to help that other person or
Hmm.
those other people. So it's very hard not to then take the knowledge and the techniques and wisdoms and practices and do them to someone. But that's a line that has an endpoint. And so part of the point of Qigong and Tai Chi practice is continually be in these circles with how you connect with yourself, circles around, and is the same as how you connect with other people, one at a time or many at a time. And there are a few techniques that are specific when you bring in a martial or a healing context, but 90% of it, probably more than 90% of it, is in these constants for how do you make good connections as a whole you in harmony. And rather than do something to someone in a line when you're trying to heal them, create a circular exchange that helps people, just like in martial, helps people learn about themselves, hear themselves, and be able to respond to what they're learning and hearing
Hmm.
in a way that's not in the way and that helps when they need help.
Yeah. Because the data is there too. I mean, I know a lot of my listeners, they want the science and where's the data. And I know you've been very involved in some of that in mind body medicine. And so, a couple things that you could tell us about sort of the science of how Tai Chi creates healing and longevity. I mean, we've talked about the theory, which is very real, but beyond that,
Sure. So, uh, those studies have been difficult to run,
of
as you
course.
know,
Mhm.
just like studies on yoga. But also, as you said, the results have been very strongly positive, much more so than for yoga. In part, I think because studying yoga is like studying the effects of eating food on human beings. There's
Right.
so much variety, and it
Right.
matters. And often the scientists don't know this because they're not subject matter experts,
Right.
so they get confused by the noise in the data. But that's because what they're studying has so much variation within it. Well, maybe with qigong and tai chi, it's still human beings practicing all this, so there's still variation, but not as much. So that's a part of what's going on in the studies of qigong being so strongly positive. And then the how, you mentioned the relaxation response earlier. So I know you know who Dr. Herbert Benson is. And I got to study with him back when he was coming through Harvard a long time ago. And in many ways, that um, kept this ball rolling for me. There seems at the very beginning to be something to being soft enough rather than rigid, that you can hear what there is to hear and move with what there is to move with, both inside of you and around you. There seems to be something about taking these very long moving breaths, breaths that move you, breaths that help you to feel and respond, and then exhales that respond, that make it easier to be here, that transform here before you even worry about bringing in the larger movements and the larger practices. There seems to be something to this kind of breathing in a deep relationship between your breath and your body. And the data is there for that too. If I just take deep breaths while holding the rest of me rigid, it doesn't work so well.
Right.
So, and I've done those practices too. And again, that's where Qigong and Tai Chi are so powerful. That's not in that practice. Disconnection is not in these practices. So just to begin, I think practicing this softness and relationship between your body and your breath in a way that makes it easy, that's simple enough and everyday enough that it doesn't become separate from the rest of life. Because whatever we do, if I
Right.
have 5 minutes for Tai Chi or 30 minutes for yoga, if that becomes just my 5 minutes and 30 minutes, and then I go about the rest, and I hope that there's some residual good feeling,
Right.
that's not anywhere
Right.
near what it could be if I breathe in that relationship when I'm getting around the kitchen or when I'm driving. There's a way to have that breathing and moving relationship from your center and using your whole body in connection with the steering wheel and seat of your car.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have a very different relationship with your car by the end of that. It can actually be a healing experience. And so that's a beauty that I think exists, especially in Qigong, where it's so simple. There's not a big memorization burden. There's not a big complex learning burden to get started. It's so everyday that it can't help but be every day.
Right. Right. And so this comes back sort of full circle to what I really had started this conversation with, which is this idea of movement as medicine. And what you're describing is this way of being within yourself in your physical form, but even energetically and spiritually, but not just in that 5 minute, practice of Tai Chi, but in how you are existing in your life 24/7, right? And that's the medicine in Tai Chi that you're talking about, which is profound and beautiful. Um, yeah, I'm kind of blown away, and I don't even know what to say. Whew, that was great. I mean, we're gonna transition to talking to Tara now, and then hopefully come back with both of you to talk about sort of your unique approach to bringing Tai Chi, the worlds of Tai Chi and yoga together in this very accessible way to so many people that is just really, really beautiful and really, really healing. So thank you. Thanks again for listening to The Healing Catalyst. If you love what you heard, please hit follow and pass it along to a friend. And if you're feeling really inspired, please rate and review so that others can find this podcast more easily. To learn more, head to avantikumarsingh.com. And to connect with me directly, find me on Instagram at Avanti Kumar Singh. I'll be back next week and hope that you will be too. Until then, remember, with the right catalyst, you have the power to activate your own healing, because healing starts within.